me, thanks to Andrew, thanks to the college Republicans, and thanks to all you guys for coming out in the middle of, I guess this is normal weather for you. I'm from California. If I lived up here, I would never leave my home, ever. This is crazy. Okay, so I'm going to start off with November 2015. In November 2015, over at Vanderbilt University, something horrible happened. There were a bunch of students there, particularly people of color, and they decided that they were going to be protesting along with this nationwide movement to protest by people of color about how college campuses were racist, terrible places filled with discrimination. And this particular set of students wanted a set of diversity classes, so they did a march to the chancellor's office. The next day, they wake up in the morning, and outside the Black Cultural Center, they find a bag of dog crap. It's a paper bag of dog crap. And this, of course, is the end of the world. And somebody has committed some sort of hate crime. So they released a statement calling the university racist and talking about the isolation of students of color and talking about how this is just pure evidence that Vanderbilt University is a place that is not welcoming to black students. There's only one problem. The police do a full investigation of this whole thing. They find out where the bag of crap came from. It turns out the bag of crap was put there by a blind girl with a service dog. And the reason that she put it there is because as a blind person walking at night, she couldn't find a trash can. And what you're supposed to do is leave it next to an attended area, some door somewhere, where someone will pick it up and throw it in the garbage. So to the black students who've been protesting, the administration say, well, you know, oops. No, instead, they say that this just demonstrates that on this campus, people with disabilities are also marginalized. And this seems to be the general tone and tenor of how things are going on America's college campuses. Everyone is a victim, and you get a certain number of virtue points if you are considered a victim. This is all an outgrowth of a theory called intersectionality, which this seems like a productive university. I mean, I heard you have majors like welding here, so you actually are here to get a job afterward. But at a lot of universities, half the students are majoring in gender studies and lesbian dance theory and all the rest of this. And so those people are particularly interested in victim status. If you have victim status, then you are a hero on campus. You don't actually have to do anything good. You don't have to promulgate good ideas. All you really have to do is be a victim. Everything's about your identity as a human being. And there is, fortunately enough, a hierarchy of victimhood. Because not everybody can be an equal victim. Some victims are more equal than others. So there are some victims who are really high on the scale and some victims who are really low on the scale. So at the top of the scale, you have folks who are LGBT. Folks who are LGBT have the highest number of victim points in this magic Super Mario video game of victimhood. And then after that come black folks. And then after that come Native American folks, and then Hispanic folks, and then females, and then Asians, and then Jews near the bottom. And then down there at the very bottom are the straight white males. Those people are not the victims. Those are the victimizers. Those are the bad guys. Those are the people who are responsible for all the ills in the world. All of the victims are victims, but only victims at the hands of those straight white males. Now, it gets a little more complex because what if you fulfill two of these categories? What if you are both, you're half Hispanic and you're half black? What happens if you're Barack Obama and you're half black and you're half white? Does your white half victimize your black half? Nobody really knows. It gets very confusing very quickly. But since everyone has a little bit of victimhood, we can all claim that we have a little bit of virtue, and then we can rip the system. Because this is the thing. The system is unfair to everyone. The system has victimized everyone. And if you get to claim victimhood, it means you don't actually have to work hard. It means you don't actually have to achieve. It means you don't have to blame yourself when things go wildly wrong. Right? So long as things are going right, nobody feels the need to do any of this stuff. But if you get a bad grade, and you happen to be a Hispanic person, it's a lot easier to say, I got the bad grade because society victimizes Hispanic people, than it is to say, maybe I should have blown off the frat party and studied. Now, we have not yet discovered, at some point, we'll all have to end democracy. Like the small r republicanism, the republic will have to end, because at some point we will discover the unicorn of intersectionality. And at some point we will discover the bisexual, transgender, female little person who's 3/4 black, 1/4 Native American, and disabled. When we find that person will have ultimate moral authority, and we will all have to just bow before her or him. Right? We'll just have to decide this is the person for whom all of the universe was created. This person has been victimized by everyone on the planet, and this person therefore has ultimate moral authority. All the rest of you shut up. We found the unicorn. But we haven't actually found that yet, so instead we have to have a bunch of fights where certain groups tell other groups they have to shut up because they're part of the victim group, and the people who are talking are not part of the victim group, so shut up. Now, all of this is designed, in reality, to do two things. It creates what I like to call, we talk about white privilege a lot, this creates what I like to call victim privilege. Okay, so victim privilege comes along with two privileges. First, you're the only one who gets to talk. If you watch the Democratic National Committee hearings, they had a bunch of hearings for various candidates who want to be the head of the DNC. There was actually a white lady who got up and she said, "It's my job to tell all the other white folks to shut up when we're talking about issues that affect black people." Right, so that's the nice thing about being in one of these victim groups is you get to tell everybody else to shut up, which is nice, because when they shut up, you win. And second, you actually get to hurt people. Because if you're a victim, you get to say that somebody else is the victimizer. Well, if you're the victim of the victimizer, what do you get to do to that person? You get to punch them. You get to do something violent. And that's how you get to the culture on campuses of microaggressions and safe spaces. So apparently, I've heard that every dorm here has a safe space sign. Every RA has a safe space sign on their door here, which is weird since, I mean, you guys all seem relatively safe. I'm not seeing riots. And maybe in Marquette in a couple of days, apparently we will see riots there, but here it seems relatively safe. It seems like you're able to be okay and say what you want to say without people getting beaten down in the snow. And apparently, but I will say that there may be, you'll have to tell me, is it possible there's a political bias when it comes to safe spaces? Because at college campuses across the country, there is. If you're on the left, it's a safe space. If you're on the right, not so much of a safe space. I've heard that there's a professor who put a note on his door and said that President Trump is, quote, a shit sandwich, homophobic, misogynistic, racist ass clown, which I guess means that he didn't get his degree in welding. And another professor here has a picture of Mike Pence labeled American Taliban, which is weird because Mike Pence doesn't have a beard. But the question is, if somebody put up a sign on their door here that said that about Barack Obama, I call him a shit sandwich of a human being, right? Would there be consequences? I assume there probably would, because in most college campuses, the safe space thing only runs one way. And the microaggression thing is designed to make people feel as though they have the right to be offended, even if they really don't have anything to be offended about. So I'm hearing that there was an email sent to all the members of the honor program here, stating the election of Donald Trump has emboldened elements in our society who are dedicated to spreading hate and intolerance, and students should make each other feel comfortable, or else a student may be dismissed from the program when they fail to maintain a record of good citizenship. So my only question is, what does good citizenship mean? If I disagree with you, does that mean that I have violated good citizenship? Is that a microaggression? Because this is how the left has traditionally interpreted microaggressions. Microaggressions, the very term, suggests, number one, that's an aggression. Somebody's aggressed you. And number two, that it's micro. It's like really, really small. So it's not that someone came out and, for example, called you a shit sandwich, racist ass clown. It's that somebody said something like, "Where are you from?" Seriously, on college campuses all over the country, if you say to people, "Where are you from?" this is considered racist, because it implies that you're not from here, which is racist. It's also stupid, because if I'm talking to you, I assume you weren't born, like, right here, like, on this spot. Where are you from seems to me a fairly normal question, but that's not unusual on campuses. They have full classes devoted to teaching people just how offended they should be, just how they can put themselves in the victim category without even having to be offended, without even having to be a victim. The result of all of this, if you teach people that they are victims, incessantly, if you tell them they are victims of American society, if you tell them they ought to be offended by every single little thing, and then you tell them that them being offended is just a result of aggression, they were microaggressed, the predictable result is violence. And this is what you've actually gotten on some college campuses. So you see a riot over at Berkeley last week because Milo Yiannopoulos says terrible things. Okay, I'm not a Milo Yiannopoulos fan. I'm happy to explain why later. But, I'm sorry, riots are not called for just because you disagree with somebody. There's this whole debate that's broken out all over the country now, whether it's okay to punch a Nazi. No, it's not okay to punch a Nazi unless the Nazi is fighting you in the battlefields of Normandy. Okay, if there's a guy walking down the street wearing a swastika armband, your best option is to point and laugh at him because he's clearly mentally having problems. Okay, it's not to punch the guy in the face. Because the problem is, once you say it's okay to start punching people for offending you, then you can punch anyone who offends you. Then you can riot, you can hit them with batons, you can set things on fire. And this is actual fascism. All the bad people in history believed they were victims. Everybody who believes they're a victim, now doesn't mean they're a bad person. There are lots of victims who are wonderful people. But everybody who is a bad person in history has believed that they were a victim of someone else, and now it is their job to act out in aggression against the person who victimized them. And this is happening increasingly at college campuses. It's why when I spoke at Cal State Los Angeles last year, there was a near riot there. I actually had to be rushed in by like 20 armed police officers. They had to escort me off campus with flashing lights. There were helicopters. It was crazy. And when I was at DePaul, I wasn't even allowed to set foot on campus at DePaul. They were afraid that if I said the same things I'm telling you, that all of the snowflakes would melt and everyone would start weeping, and they'd all have mental breakdowns, and they couldn't study lesbian dance theory properly, and they would have to be reduced to studying gay dance theory. And then, so literally, I went to DePaul, this is a few months back, and they literally threatened to arrest me if I put my foot on the campus. They had to hold the event somewhere else. You can watch it, you can look at the videos. It's really bizarre. I walk up and there's this 9-foot-tall security guy looking down at me and saying to me, if you literally put your foot here, I'm going to arrest you. They brought out a sheriff from Cook County to take me to jail if I stepped on campus because mustn't offend. Okay, that's the essence of fascism. Here's the rule. Whoever brings the guns to the discussion is the fascist. Now here's the dirty little secret about all of this. It's not just that I think that victimhood mentality is bad and counterproductive, which I'll talk about in a second. It's also a lie. I hate to break it to everybody who's built their identity around you're a victim. You're not. In America, you're probably not a victim. If you are a victim, it's probably by an individual, and if you're being victimized by an individual, you should report it. It's probably a crime. If somebody is victimizing you, if somebody's a racist that you know about, please tell me about it so I can picket that business with you. If somebody is truly engaging in evil behavior, we're all on the same side, right? Nobody wants to see bad people prosper. But the idea that American society is dedicated to beating down black people, or beating down gay people, or beating down women is just a lie. It is not true. This is where you hear about white privilege all the time. And shut up because white privilege. Hey, look, it is true. American history is replete with racism. Anybody who denies that would be stupid. And some people are still affected by the racism of the past. If your grandfather wasn't allowed to get a job, he has less wealth to pass on to your dad, who has less wealth to pass on to you. But we can't fix where you start in life. There's no way to do that. We're not God. Government's not God. And what's more, if you try to fix where people start in life by invading the rights of other people, you are now doing someone else a disservice. You can't punish my kid for being born in better circumstances just because another kid was born in worse circumstances. That's an injustice. More injustice does not help mitigate injustice. It creates more of it and more bad feeling. And here's the truth in America. If you follow some pretty basic rules, you will succeed. That's the beauty of living in the United States, and this is regardless of race. According to the Brookings Institute, a left-leaning institute, if you want to not be permanently poor in the United States, it has nothing to do with your skin color. If you don't want to be permanently poor in the United States, you follow 3 rules. You get married before you have babies, you finish high school, you get a job. That's it. You do those 3 things, you will not be permanently poor in the United States of America. According to Brookings, only 2% of Americans who have followed those 3 rules are in poverty. 75% of people who are poor and follow those 3 rules are now in the middle class. And you're all capable of that. I mean, you're already number one. It looks like everybody here basically who's finished high school. I assume that you're all capable of getting a job. And I know that you're all capable of not having sex without that thing on it before you're married. I think you can fulfill all of these rules and therefore not be poor. And that doesn't have anything to do with color. That just has to do with behavior. And here's the proof that behavior matters and not color. Okay, the poverty rate among white non-married families in 2008 was 21.7%. So white single moms is nearly 22% in 2008. What was the black poverty rate for married couples that same year? 6.9%. So what happened to the white privilege? It just disappeared. I thought black people are invariably worse off. No, it turns out that people who make good decisions are invariably better off. And by the way, the idea that it's only white people who are keeping down black people, it's all racism, that would fail to explain why it is that the highest median income racial group is Asian folks. Is that Asian privilege? Is it because the Constitution is written in Korean? Or is it because people are making better decisions inside Asian communities than they are inside some white communities, some Hispanic communities, some black communities? People talk about white privilege with regard to crime, as though the police, the fine folks you see around here, and thank you for your help today, as though the police are going around randomly arresting black people just for being black. That's a bunch of crap. It's not true. Felonies are under-prosecuted in the black community because black communities are under-policed and there are too many people who won't be witnesses in the black community. Police are less likely to kill black people than white people in similar shooting circumstances. In 2015, cops shot 987 people. A huge majority of them were armed or threatening deadly force. Blacks represented 26% of the people shot. They represent about 12.6% of the population. So that seems disproportionate, right? Well, it would until you realize that nearly 50% of all murders in the United States are committed by black folks. Again, this has nothing to do with race. This just has to do with breakdowns in statistics. Police officers are almost 19 times more likely to be shot by a black male then an unarmed black male is to be shot and killed by the police. And by the way, the stuff that you're going to hear in all your sociology classes, if you have them up here, okay, all this stuff about implicit bias tests that you hear, where, oh, you just go online and you take this magic test and it tells you if you're a racist, bunch of crap. It's not true. Implicit bias tests are flawed, deeply flawed. They are not replicable. You can take the same implicit bias test twice, and one time will show you're a racist, another time will show you're not. And there's no correlation, none, between your implicit bias test that shows you're a racist and actual racist behavior. And I know that because the creators of the implicit bias test have said so. Hey, how about women? Women who think that they're victims. I keep hearing that women in the United States are victims. No, you're not. Sorry. It's funny that this isn't an uplifting speech. It's an oppressing speech for so many people. Oh, I'm not a victim. What am I going to do now? Like, be a good person and have a great life. That's what you're going to do now. Like, you say to people they're not victims, and it's like you're taking away their identity. They feel terrible about themselves. Oh, God, now what am I going to make of myself? Women are not victims. Okay, people who are anti-abortion are not anti-abortion because they want to victimize women. People who are anti-abortion are anti-abortion because they don't want women to victimize babies. And no one cares about your esophagus. When you say, keep your hands off my body, I'm not interested in your body, lady. I'm married. And the only thing I'm interested in is the baby that's growing inside your body that has bodily integrity outside of you and is a separate human. And that has nothing to do with sexism. That has everything to do with protection of human life. By the way, you want to protect women abroad, maybe the place to start is by banning sex-selective abortions. More women are killed in sex-selective abortions than are killed in the United States every year around the world. Hey, how about the idea of the wage gap? We hear this one a lot. We saw this at the Audi commercials. I assume everybody saw the Super Bowl. You saw that stupid Audi commercial? Yeah. This idiotic Audi commercial, one that shows this little girl driving around. And she's driving in her little go-kart, and the narrator's saying, how can you tell your daughter that one day she'll be poor, barefoot, and pregnant in the kitchen? And then they get an Audi, and they're like, but at least she's in an Audi. The funniest thing about that particular ad is that somebody tweeted at Audi, Audi, you pay women less than you pay men. And Audi immediately responded, well, actually, we pay women exactly the same as we pay men when you take into account the amount of time in the workforce, the number of hours they work, and their job descriptions. Right, just like the rest of the United States. The wage gap is a myth. It does not exist. In fact, in 147 out of the 150 most populous cities in the United States, women who are just fresh out of school, have the same degrees as men, don't have kids, and spend the same amount of time in the workplace, earn significantly more than men, according to Time magazine. So that just is nonsense. By the way, 55% of college students are women. 55% of voters are women. 50% of people with graduate degrees are women. Does that sound like a victimized population to you? It sounds like women, if they banded together and vote, could enslave all of us. Okay, so this idea that there's some poor pecan minority and all the men are running things, if we figured out the scam how to run things, then life would be very different because men are pigs. Okay, men are pigs. But our piggishness has not prevented women from rising in society and becoming a majority of voters, a majority of college degree holders, a majority of grad school students. By the way, and also I'll mention the rape culture thing here. You keep hearing this myth that's going around about rape culture, how if you're a woman on campus, that you are undoubtedly going to be raped. One in 4 of you will be raped, 1 in 3 of you will be raped. Everybody's just running around raping. It's a rape fiesta. It's a party of rape. No, that's not true. According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, there are 6 rapes per 1,000 per year on college campuses. Okay, that is not 1 quarter. 1 quarter, if you don't know math, 1 quarter would be 250 out of 1,000. There are 6. 6. The reason that you get these skewed statistics is because somebody did a survey where they asked if a woman had ever been touched without her consent. That means a guy goes in for a kiss, you turn your cheek, he pecks you on the cheek, and they count that as rape. That's what that means. That's where that survey statistic comes from, so it's a bunch of nonsense. By the way, your parents would be absolute idiots to send you to a college campus where they knew that you were going to get raped. I mean, who would even come here? How many of the women in this room thought twice about going to college because they thought, oh God, I'm so safe in high school, I'm going to go to college and someone is definitely going to rape me? Very few women are thinking that way because the truth is the risk on campus of being raped is extraordinarily low. That's not making light of rape. Rapists should be castrated or killed. That's saying that the statistics that are being put out there and promulgated that women are big victims of society on campus is just not true. How about the idea that LGBT people in the United States are victims? Obviously, this is not to deny there are sexist and racist and transphobic and homophobic people in society. Of course there are. And of course there are individual people who are victimized by these people. This is to say that American society as a broad society is not victimizing folks. The idea that gay people are victims in American society, First of all, even the gay marriage argument is now out the window thanks to the Supreme Court decision. But women and lesbian couples make far more money than women and straight couples. Men and gay couples make slightly less money than men and straight couples. But same-sex couples with both partners in the labor force make about $8,000 per year more than straight couples with both people in the workforce, and typically are much more highly educated. How about poor people in American society? They're victimized, right? Everybody's a victim. So how about, are poor people victimized? No, nobody who's rich is making you poor. So I saw before that somebody showed me a picture of the protesters who are outside, the people holding the sign. And I have to thank them, number one. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being peaceful and not disrupting. So that's nice. I'm glad that people take advantage of the ability to protest. One of the statistics they show is something like the top 10% own all the wealth in the country and the bottom 90% own nothing. Okay, did the top 10% steal it? You're going to have to explain to me why they did something wrong. It's not enough to just say there's a rich person and a poor person. Isn't that sad? You're going to have to show me how the rich person screwed the poor person if you want me to punish the rich person. The idea that the middle class in this country is disappearing is not true. In fact, in 1979, 12% of Americans were upper middle class. Today, 30% of Americans are upper middle class. When people say there's a disappearing middle class, it's not true. What's happened is that the middle class actually bifurcated. The vast majority of the middle class went up. The lower middle class disappeared. American income mobility, you keep hearing that the American dream is dead. You heard this from both sides of the aisle. You heard from Trump and Bernie Sanders. The American dream is dead. It's not dead. Income mobility is statistically exactly the same as it was in the late 1970s, and we actually have the same income mobility levels as European countries when you take out the confounding factors. Factors like single motherhood. Factors like not graduating from high school. When you compare populations that are the same in terms of education, in terms of cultural background, you actually have the same statistics in the United States that you get in places like Denmark. And final note on poverty. You are lucky as all hell to be living in the United States in 2017. Almost 9 in 10 Americans have a standard of living above the global middle income standard. So you're all rich. Everyone's rich by global standards in the United States. Only 7% of people in the United States were middle income. Only 3% were low income by global standards. Only 2% were poor by global standards. This is the richest country in the face of the earth and in the history of humanity. And everybody sitting around bitching and moaning like we're living in a third world country is just being ridiculous. So what's the problem with all of this? The problem is that dividing us makes us worse. Dividing us makes us worse people. It makes us look at each other like we're enemies, like we don't get along. Like the cops are the bad guys, or like the straight white males are the bad guys, or like the blacks are the bad guys, or like the rich people are the bad guys. Somebody's always the bad guy. And politicians get off on this stuff. Politicians have to divide you in order to divide you against each other and then get you out to vote against the bad guys. But the truth is, in a free country, no one cares enough about you to be the bad guy. No one cares. You can do whatever you want to do because I don't know you, and you don't know me. You're not going to bother me. I'm not going to bother you. And if I do bother you, that's probably a crime. The beauty of living in the United States of America is that if you don't think of yourself as a victim, you actually end up in a better place than if you do think of yourself as a victim. Victimhood is not virtue. Victimhood is a deficit. Thinking of yourself as a victim makes you unable to function properly. Northwestern University had a study just last year, and they found that perception of discrimination, if you believe you're being discriminated against, it actually leads to lower grades, less academic motivation, less persistence when encountering an academic challenge. We keep hearing, raise awareness of victimhood. How about raising awareness of non-victimhood? You want to make people feel like they can achieve? Tell them there's nothing standing in their way except for them. The biggest obstacle virtually everyone in this room is going to face outside of health obstacles, the biggest obstacle all of you will face is obstacles of your own making. That's true of every human being, in the United States at least, because we're lucky to live in a free country. In a free country, you are your worst enemy. So if you just get out of your own way and stop telling you can't do it, if you get out of your own way and stop believing people who tell you society is stopping you, you'll be much better off. You'll be able to succeed and flourish. Your life is in your hands because America is a free country and you are not a victim. And the sooner we all get that in our heads, the sooner we all realize that we're not victims, that we're actually brothers in this journey between birth and death in which we're going to traverse a lot of ground together. The sooner we realize we're not trying to stop each other, we're actually trying to help each other by not getting in each other's way, the better off we're all going to be. That's the only way we're going to be able to live together in a multi-ethnic, multicultural society. It's the only way that we're going to be able to live together in a free society. Freedom collapses when people think of their neighbors as the enemy. Your neighbor is not the enemy. Your neighbor is your friend so long as your neighbor doesn't bother you. And it's not your neighbor's job to hold you up. It's not your job to hold up your neighbor. If you want to hold up your neighbor, good for you. It makes you a moral person and a good person. But it's certainly not the government's job to force you to do that. And it is certainly not society's job to fill in the gaps where you have failed. It is your job to pick yourself up. And the sooner we all realize that, the better off we'll be. Thanks so much. Happy to take your questions. I think folks are going to line up at the microphones.